The Taconic mountain range takes its name from a Lenape word meaning in the trees, and its great forests have beckoned settlers and visitors for millennia. From the Mohican, Lenape, Haudenosaunee, and other first peoples of the region to the Dutch, German, and English colonists of the 17th century, on up to the area's current residents and thousands of annual visitors. However, most of the trees seen today are less than a century old. For most of the 1800s, Copake Falls was not just a haven of recreation, but a thriving hub of industry. Its ancient forests once felled to fuel mighty furnaces. If you know what to look for, you can still spot signs of Copake Falls' industrial past. Clues pointing to 2 centuries of revolutionary transformation, from forest to ironworks and back again. The production of iron in the region began in the mid-1700s at the Ancram Iron Works, 9 miles southeast of Copake Falls. The oldest ironworks in New York, these mills were one of many local industries that helped transform the mid-Atlantic region into the industrial center of the new nation. After a century of operation, these early works were outdated, and manager Lemuel Pomeroy II picked Copake Falls as the site to build a new, larger facility. The location had everything that was needed: raw iron ore, a source of power, and plentiful fuel. All 3 were necessary to produce iron, which is not naturally found in its pure form. Raw iron ore resembles a rusty rock more than anything recognizably metal. To extract metal, the ore has to be smelted. Raw ore, charcoal, and limestone were placed in a massive, superheated blast furnace. After a process of chemical transformation and separation, streams of molten iron were drained from the furnace. The Copake Iron Works opened shop in 1845. The ore was mined on site in a large pit. The surrounding forests were felled to make charcoal. Dams and mill wheels on the Bashbish Creek provided water power for the machinery. One last advantage the location had was a railroad line scheduled to be built nearby, in no small part thanks to lobbying from owner Lemuel Pomeroy. When the line was finally completed in 1852, the company had even quicker access to markets. For labor, the owners drew upon many people who came from outside New York State, including colliers, skilled charcoal makers from France, ironmasters from Massachusetts and Connecticut, and miners and other laborers coming from Ireland. The Copake Iron Works opened at a time when every day over 500 Irish immigrants arrived in the United States, refugees from the Great Famine. For many immigrants, industrial towns were an attractive alternative to the teeming slums and discrimination found in the bigger cities. By 1880, nearly half of the residents in Copake Falls were of Irish descent. Copake Falls was run as a company town. Housing, schools, a store, and other facilities were built by the company. Most employees were not paid in regular money, but rather in company scrip, a kind of company-issued money that could only be used at a company store or to pay rent for housing. This helped owners maintain tight control over their workers. At first, the ironworks produced only heavy bars that needed to be melted and cast into useful items at a foundry. By the 1870s, the ironworks were also producing plows and railroad car wheels, 2 important items in the westward expansion of farmers and transportation that was reshaping North America. Over 58 years of operation, at least 1,000 acres of nearby forest were cut down to fuel the Copake Ironworks, drastically altering the landscape. Rains began eroding the treeless shores and mountain slopes that the furnace was built upon. Eventually, Bashbish Brook threatened to wash the entire ironworks away, halted only by massive levees of slag built along the shores. With the surrounding forests gone, the Copake Ironworks had to bring in charcoal from Vermont. Timber was not the only resource that proved finite. By the 1880s, the local iron ore was exhausted. In addition to dwindling resources, the Copake Ironworks also struggled in a changing market. Regional industries across the country were either closing down or being swallowed up by corporate behemoths such as Carnegie Steel. In a new era of bigger and bigger businesses, it was difficult for any manufacturer to survive if it did not operate on a national, or even global scale. In 1903, the Copake Iron Works, its resources tapped and unable to compete in the broader markets, was shut down. Some of the company's houses were sold off to their residents, while the industrial works fell into disrepair. The surrounding landscape began to change rapidly once again. By the 1920s, the automobile helped fuel a surge of interest in recreational travel and rising demand for public parklands. The taxpayers of New York State voted to fund a massive new park system, and wealthy patrons such as Francis and Ellen Masters donated huge parcels of land. The last owner of the Copake Iron Works chose this moment to sell his lands as well, adding to what would become Copake State Park. Overseeing the creation of the park was a new commission that included an up-and-coming politician named Franklin Delano Roosevelt. When Roosevelt became president, he did not forget about the New York parklands only 40 miles north of his home in Hyde Park.
And of course, I'm a tremendous enthusiast on planting idle land and vacant acres, because with my own eyes I have seen these trees growing. Some of them that I put in 20 years ago are almost as high as a house at the present time.
The Civilian Conservation Corps, one of Roosevelt's signature relief programs, transformed the former ironworks lands into a public park by planting trees, repurposing buildings, and adapting the flooded mine pit into a swimming area that the public continues to use to this day. Today, over 200,000 people visit Copake State Park each year to enjoy its scenic beauty and recreational delights. More attention is also being paid to Copake Falls' days as a company town. The group Friends of Copake State Park was formed to preserve, stabilize, and interpret the Copake Ironworks historic site. In 2007, the Copake Ironworks was listed on the National and State Register of Historic Places and designated a National Heritage Area site in the Hudson Valley in 2016. Today, reminders of the region's industrial past coexist with lush green forests, scenic trailways, and the magnificent Bash Bish Falls. Thank you for coming, and enjoy your visit among these historic and natural wonders found in Copake State Park.